Views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium. You are tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com.
To the Melanated Radio Show. I am your host, Brother Tommy. Brother Rio, you out here with me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most certainly. How you doing today, brother?
Oh, doing well. Doing good. How you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling good, man. Feeling good. You know, I had a little short trip out of town. Enjoyed some festivities and some family. But now I'm back, ready to give the people some information.
Yeah. You flew up to Ohio, huh?
Yes, sir. Sure did. Long trip, bumpy ride, but it's good to be home.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so anything else you any ideas, any thoughts you had for this weekend? How you feeling?
Well, today is the 7th of August, 2017, and we are coming to you today with another live show. And I'm just ready to. I'm interested to hear that article that you were telling me about earlier. Okay. I think we ought to just go ahead and jump right into it.
Okay, hold on for a sec, brother Rio. Okay. Everything is fine. We up and rolling, and everything is good. At first, I was getting a little feedback from Brother Scotty, like we was having some technical difficulties. Brother Scotty, is everything cool?
Yeah, I'm good. Y'all sound great, but I just don't see you streaming live on the server. So we still saving this for the podcast. But yeah, log in to the server and stop the auto DJ, then log in with your butt.
Yeah.
Where it say Melanated Roots for your program. So everybody listening on the different networks, we simulcast to know Melanated Roots Radio is live right now on BTR.
Yes, sir. Okay, I appreciate that, Brother Scotty. Okay, Brother Rio, you ready to move forward?
Oh, yes, sir. Always, man. Always.
Okay. Again, today is, what is today? August 7th?
Today is the 7th, brother.
Yes, sir.
August 7th.
Yes, sir.
2017.
Lot going on in the world.
Don't I know it? You hit me with a bomb, brother. You hit me with a bomb.
Which one? What you referring to?
But the article that you had sent me.
Yeah, because what it does is it really kind of follows up with the show we had last week when we were talking about the blurred lines of homosexuality and the environment that they're basically just setting the stage to have a whole bunch of people confused.
Yeah, and what really struck me about it was the fact that, how we were telling people, no matter what your stance is on it, we're going to have to deal with this topic. We're going to have to deal with these issues, and we need to at least start approaching our kids about it and letting them know whatever your views are, you need to start instilling that into your kids, because they're going to be coming across this information, and it's going to be preached to them from different facets of society that all these things are going to be acceptable. And if your stance is that it's not acceptable, you need to start telling them now, because it's about to come down the pipe hard and heavy.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you can just see it, in all different directions, kids basically are just confused. There's so many chemicals in the environment and toxins in the air and herbicides and pesticides to where, now you got 2 and 3 little year old kids want to be a totally different sex.
Yes, and it seems to me like they're expanding it to be culturally acceptable. So, if they have any curiosity of it about it, at all, hey, well, come over here. Let's see if it fits you. No. Keep that over there.
Yeah. I know.
That's fine for you, but no.
Yeah. So to kind of
they're trying to go to the mainstream. They want to make it acceptable. So they want people to be inclusive of it. Period.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about it is just so obvious. I mean, here you're running into people and they want to have a conversation of, all of a sudden I'm born this way, but yet, it is just proliferating at a rate to where it's just like, wow. And remember, we talked about as a part of the show last time how people are socialized by their environment. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of people want to act as if the sociology aspects of existence, within groups don't exist.
Well, brother, I did have to take a step back, personally, because in doing the research for the show, it started to become clear that the way that the organizations and the corporations and the powers that be have tampered with the food, been giving us, poisons and medicines and, different elements to kind of nurture that type of environment inside of a person to where they're having these feelings, they really don't have control over it. So their self-determination or their choice of how to live their life, whether they choose to be, traditional or they want to, beat their path and do, their own thing, they're kind of being robbed of that, because even if they want to do a traditional route, you have messengers and chemicals and all these other things screaming inside of you, no, this is what we're going to do, and this is what's going to feel right to you, so, people are having to battle and struggle with that. I sympathize with that. And they are victims, but on the sociological level, to have it be pushed upon me or my children as to, saying you need to be inclusive of this and, this is okay and, it's normal and, when you feel this way, you can come and explore. It'll be a safe environment for you to come and just, hang out and see if you like it. You might like it, And that's what I don't agree with.
Yeah, and then
if you're gonna
go ahead.
Do it over there. Do it over there, but don't try to have it in the general populous area where most people in the area don't identify with that way of living, and saying, yeah, you need to change.
Yeah,
that's wrong.
I agree, and especially listening to kids who are talking about, wanting to change their identity, their sexual identity, wanting to behave different other than what sex they were born with. You have parents who are now being socialized to listen to that, to buy into it, to say, hey, this is my child being natural and I have to respond to this. So, so that's why I think this article that I'm about to share with our listening audience really, really, hits home that, they're really, really creating an environment to make this type of lifestyle, this LGBTQ lifestyle, serious and the consequences of it in terms of depopulation, population control, all kinds of things, is definitely starting to move forward in a real heavy sense. And,
Agreed, brother.
And Brother Rio, but we got to let the folks know tonight. We definitely going to be coming hard on the topic of the show, which is the 7 souls of man and their culmination into the Christ. And what we're going to deal with is the spiritual concept of the number 7 and why it is being used throughout a lot of religious doctrine. And also we're going to talk about how esoteric and a lot of metaphysical interpretations of concepts are perverting the original meaning. So just want to let the people know, hang in there, because we're going to come hard on the original topic and bring forth some real strong information that speaks to what we're talking about.
Agreed. And also we'll be sticking with the theme of how the ancestors meant for us to interpret information that they left for us in a particular way, and how when different cultures either spread out or were conquered by Europeans, how the messages got mixed up and perverted and, disseminated with political agendas, as well as just overall ignorance. So we'll be sticking with that theme and highlighting and illustrating how that has come into being.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna move into this article, and every time I read the title, I just like, wow. It's called Transgender Day Camp, among the first to include 4-year-olds. Okay, so wow, you got 4-year-olds being able, 4-year-olds at these transgender camps. You ready for me to bring it, Rio?
Go ahead and bring it, brother. They
Okay.
need to hear it.
All right. In some ways, California's Rainbow Day Camp is very conventional, with kids making friendship bracelets, playing basketball, and singing songs. But in other ways, it's extraordinary, unique. The day camp in El Cerrito in the San Francisco Bay Area caters to transgender and gender-fluid children ages 4 to 12. Experts say it's one of the only camps of its kind in the world open to preschoolers. Rainbow officials say the camp gives kids a safe, fun place to be themselves. The camp's enrollment has tripled since it opened in 2015, and plans are underway to open a branch next summer in Colorado. Gender experts say Rainbow's rapid growth reflects what they're seeing in gender clinics around the country, an increasing number of kids coming out as transgender at young ages. In this Tuesday, July 11, 2017 photo, they're showing a picture of this young girl. Sandra Collins, the executive director and founder of InGender, hugs her child Scarlett at the Bay Area Rainbow Day Camp in El Cerrito. Gender experts say Rainbow's rapid growth reflects what they're seeing in gender clinics around the country, an increasing number of kids coming out. Okay, why did it say that same thing? Coming out at the same age. Okay, hold on, Rio. Let me move this up, because I got it. My little computer's messing up. Okay. All right, here we go, right here. Okay, organizers say the camp gives kids a safe, fun place to be themselves. The camp's enrollment has tripled. Also, they say the gender experts say Rainbow's growth reflects. It's coming back, and I'm reading the same thing, Mario. I think that my computer is messing up, and it's coming back to the same thing. But anyway, it's talking about a camp that is made for children, and including children up to 4 years old, who, I guess, in their infinite wisdom of being 4-year-olds, have come up with an understanding of their full life, and I have already decided that they now want to be something other than what they are. What you think about that, Mario?
Oh, yes, sir. And I have, it might be a slightly different article, but it's talking about that same camp. So I can continue where you kind of left off.
Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to read was, it says, a decade ago, this camp wouldn't have existed. Eventually, I do believe it won't be so innovative. Camp founder Sandra Collins said, I didn't know you could be transgender at a very young age, but my daughter knew for sure at 2. Collins' experience as the mother of a transgender girl, now 9, inspired her to start the camp, and another for 13 to 17-year-olds called Camp Kicking It. A lot of these kids have been bullied and had trauma at school. This is a world where none of that exists, and they're in the majority, Collins said. That's a new experience for kids who are used to hiding and feeling small. 4th grader Scarlett Reinhold, Collins' daughter, who was born a boy, says at camp she can be herself. I feel comfortable for being who I am and who I want to be, says Scarlett, a confident 9-year-old in a frilly skirt who wears her dark hair long and wavy. There is little comprehensive data on young children who identify as transgender, but experts say as the number of young people come to their clinics increases, the prevailing medical guidance has shifted. The favorite protocol today is known as the gender affirmative approach, which focuses on identifying and helping transgender children to socially transition, to live as the gender they identify with, rather than the one they were born with until they're old enough to decide on medical options like puberty blockers and later hormone treatments. The Center for Trans Youth Health and Development at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles started a decade ago with about 40 patients. Now it has over 900 people ages 3 to 25 enrolled in its program, with 150 on its waiting list. I just think there's a lot more openness to the understanding that trans adults start as trans kids, Olson Kennedy said. When people say, isn't this just too young? My question back to them is, too young for what? How young do people know their gender? The answer to that is some people know at 3, and others they don't know until 30. Did you want to comment on any of that, brother?
It's just basically letting you show the agenda that is moving forward, and the environment is basically creating this. So it's just basically we got to recognize it, and like you said, it's going to be front center in our schools, the schools our kids go to, and everywhere we are. This is basically what we're going to be dealing with. So we better take heed to it now.
Well, brother, I wanted to read one more part if I could.
Oh, yes, sir.
One family traveled from Africa to enroll their son in the camp for its full 3-week summer session. The 9-year-old goes by the name Nayo at Rainbow, but has not publicly come out as a transgender girl. The family asked that their last name and the country where they live be kept confidential, fearing repercussions there. Nayo's mother, Miriam, said she watched her child blossom at camp. Nayo was happier and less prone to outbursts, made friends, opened up about school bullying, and wants to return next summer. I think for the first time, Nayo feels like just a normal kid, Miriam said. Before flying home, she said, Nayo wrote a note to the camp's counselors. It read, "Thank you for making me feel so happy."
Just buying into the feelings of a 4-year-old, huh, or a 9-year-old, basically allowing kids who are not gotten to a point to really know who or what they are, allowing these children's emotions and feelings to satisfy them from that standpoint. As a parent, I don't know. I guess I would have to say, brother, what would you do, Brother Rio, if a child of yours came up to you and was speaking in this manner, or saying they feel this way or that way, or expressing themselves as other than what their gender was? I would have to agree. That would probably be a pretty tough thing to deal with. What you think?
Well, first things first, brother, I would have to say that, to each parent, I do recognize that they have the right and the authority to raise their own offspring in whatever manner they see fit. So if they feel like these types of camps and this type of environment is going to allow their child to flourish, to grow, as the article said, to be more confident and enrich their lives, then, you know, by all means, if that's for you, then, you know, have at it. You know, everybody deserves their own little spot where they can flourish and have peace. But as for me, children are very impressionable, and I would have to stand by raising the child as I thought fit. And when the child is old enough to make its own decision, if at that time that child still wants to explore different alternatives, then, you know, I'm always going to be in their corner. I'm always going to support them, you know, but once they're at the age when they can make their own decisions, they can make their own decisions about that. But while they're under my care, to the best of my ability, you know, I'm going to try to raise them into what I think is appropriate and what I think is going to be right. It could be just a phase, but if it's encouraged, then it could turn into more. So those are my thoughts, brother.
Yes, sir.
What do you think?
Well, I feel you. It's definitely a point of confusion. And sometimes you have to be the one to be able to nurture your child to the understanding of the confusion and try to, you know what I'm saying, develop ways or have certain activities or certain familial settings to where, you know, you encourage other things other than those type of things, in my opinion. But, you know, it's a very difficult task, especially, with what we talked about in terms of how toxic the air is and the estrogen in the food and all kind of problems that people are having because of the environment and the pushing of these toxins into our community and, you know, to the masses of the people in general. So, hey, I can't call it, Brother Real. I guess I would just have to, you know, I see what you're saying, and I think along the same lines that you think in terms of what you just said about, you know, the type of environment that I would like to raise my child in. And you know, I do the best I can in terms of trying to control the environment that my children are in because, you know, they're easily influenceable. But it would be a tough situation, brother. I tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I do want to emphasize that, you know, when in common areas, I can understand tolerance and allowing a person to, you know, be themselves when we have to be in common areas. Mm-hmm. But in different facets of life, when you want to be removed from that, just because, you know, not even to be judgmental, but it's just not the way that you want to live your own life, and it's not what you want the people you care about around, you know, then to have it forced upon you to the point where, you know, well, you should be secure enough to be able to deal with this, or, you know, just accept it. We just like this, you know, but you can be like that. There can be different codes of conduct, you know, as to what you do privately or in areas of town where you are the majority, to where, you know, if I want to go to that area, I know what I'm going to get. If my kids end up in that area, you know, they can be prepared. This is what you're going to see. But, you know, just in random places and, you know, out and about and, you know, I don't know. I just think there need to be agreed upon rules that are going to govern how we interact with each other.
Well,
instead of us trying to impose something on them and them trying to impose something on us.
Well,
because
to an extent, for the greater good of the community. Remember, the beginning of our nation is the family and the protection of the family, and everybody in the family has to do what's good and what's best for the family. And if any certain type of behavior is not beneficial for the sustenance and the sustaining of the family, then the behavior has to be removed. I understand having, you know, being emotional about people's feelings and things of that nature, you know, that has its place. But the greater good of the community, the greater good of our people as a whole, is the bigger picture. So, in order to cultivate oneself, spiritually, physically, and a lot of things we do, you have to follow the footprint that has been put down by our ancestors. And there's certain behavior that you have to ostracize, or you basically gonna allow energy into your family, into your nation, that is eventually gonna destroy it. So
I agree.
It's a very fine line, but the bottom line, you have to err on the side of the family and of the nation. And if something does not produce life, if something does not give life and sustain it and nurture it, then it's got to go.
Understood. No argument from me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Hey, but I also wanted to, okay, now, Brother Rio, we've been talking about our topic, the 7 souls of man and their culmination into the Christ. And, but what I wanted to do before we got into that topic, I wanted to give our listeners some information, is, because everybody, or a lot of, scholars and a lot of people are putting out information about, the medical and surgical advances our ancient ancestors had in the Nile Valley or in our ancient lands. And I wanted to drop a few nuggets on the people before we get all the way into our topic and show what we did when it came to medicine and what we knew way back then. And then also, I know you're gonna come in with speak to how other cultures have basically perverted what we brought forth. And we're going to show that with the 7 souls of man. And I think we're going to be able to show it with this here, too. How you feeling on that?
I think it's going to be a good segue in. It'll illustrate the point that we're trying to get everybody to kind of see that, information was laid down, that information disseminated throughout the world. But as it did, that information got perverted. And we are now subject to this perverted information, and people or different cultures or populace of people are passing, number one, they're passing it off as their own, like they came up with it, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And number two, because we are not in touch with the original information, we are subject to the propaganda that they are feeding us, and it is being detrimental to us mentally, physically, and medicinally.
And, Brother Rio, some of us are living our lives according to these false interpretations and these misinterpretations and applications of ancient knowledge.
Right. And ultimately, what it is a distraction, because we're talking about all this nonsense instead of dealing with the real issues that are prevalent within our community and getting to the information or strategies that will be beneficial for us.
Yes, sir. Okay, Brother Rio.
So I'm ready.
Okay.
Go ahead and kick it.
Yes, sir, brother. I'm going to jump into this. So this is a little bit of information about medicine and surgery in the ancient Nile Valley. Okay. The ancient Greek poet Homer stated that in medical knowledge, Egypt leaves the rest of the world behind. According to the ancient Egyptian historian Manetho, Pharaoh Zoser, who existed from the year 5581 BC to 5524 BC, so we're talking about over 7,000 years ago, of the first dynasty, wrote a book on anatomy. The same historian reported that Pharaoh Djet, also of the first dynasty, wrote a famous medical text. Scholars today believe they have identified the Djet era text. They think it has survived as the Edwin Smith surgical papyrus. Now, the Edwin Smith surgical papyrus is now housed in New York Academy of Medicine. It was one of 10 surviving ancient Egyptian medical texts. It describes 48 cases of bone surgery and external pathology. It demonstrates a detailed knowledge of anatomy, gives remarkably accurate descriptions of traumatic surgical lesions, and describes their treatments where applicable. Though written during the 18th dynasty, it is a copy of a much older Egyptian text. The 18th dynasty copyists included glossaries for the reader because the original language nearly 3,000 years earlier was just too archaic. What has survived is only 1/3 of the original manuscript that stops at the 48th case. Consequently, it deals only with the skeletal and soft tissue parts of the head and neck, i.e. the upper portion of the body. It uses nearly 100 anatomical terms in the head and neck region. Each case is written out as an examination, a diagnosis, a treatment, and finally, glossaries to explain the First Dynasty language to an 18th Dynasty surgeon. Professor Charles Finch, a medical doctor who has made a special study of this papyrus, was somewhat baffled by the standards of medical knowledge achieved. He notes that cases 29 through 33 all represent additional case descriptions of vertebral dislocations and subluxations and their clinical consequences. At present, some of these conditions are almost impossible to detect or describe fully without X-ray studies. The question then arises is how did our ancient surgeon, living and practicing thousands of years ago, manage to diagnose and describe these problems without the benefits of X-rays? To answer Professor Finch, we just don't know. It should also be borne in mind that with thousands of years of practicing mummification, the ancient Egyptians amassed an array of knives, scalpels, and surgical techniques. They used red-hot implements to seal off bleeding. They closed wounds with adhesive tape or sutures. Mummification itself took a team of skilled medical personnel and perhaps 70 days to complete. Among the many actions needed to complete a mummification involve evisceration, removing the brain, desiccation, washing the body inside and out using natron, anointing the purified body with aromatic oils and herbs, and wrapping the body in endless bandages. Among the chemical substances involved in the process were palm wine, various spices, perfumes, myrrh, aniseed, onions, and natron. The Ebers Papyrus has chapters on internal diseases, ophthalmology, dermatology, gynecology, obstetrics, pregnancy diagnosis, contraception, dentistry, surgical treatment of abscesses, tumors, fractures, and burns. The papyrus has a section on the movement of the heart and pulse, cited from an older text called the Book of the Heart and Vessels. This document describes how the heart pumps blood around the body. What it did not say was that the blood returns to the heart. It was this discovery that made William Harvey, the 17th century English scholar, famous. You see now this white dude done got famous off of something our ancestors put out there, Rio. You catch that one?
Oh, yeah.
The papyrus also describes in arcane and picturesque language certain heart ailments such as angina, pictorius, and stroke Adam's attacks. Finally, the Ebers Papyrus has a section on a diagnostic percussion. In the Old Kingdom period, the doctors were specialists: eyes, head, teeth, intestines, etc. There was even a separate guild of bone setters who treated fractures and dislocations and pioneered the very same techniques that Hippocrates, the ancient Greek scholar, would popularize 1,000 years later. The Egyptian medical doctors were employed by the state. One Old Kingdom position was chief of dentists and physicians. Another position was director of the women doctors. How you feel on that? You got any points to make, Rio, or you want me to push on?
Man, push on. You saying?
Incidentally, nearly 120 physicians appear in the Egyptian annals. Typically, they were trained in an instruction called the Per-Ankh. At once, this served as the school, library, clinic, temple, and seminary. Much of the teaching and training was taught orally, as was done elsewhere in Africa. Described in both the Edwin Smith and the Ebers Papyri, the ancient Egyptian doctors pioneered the use of the diagnostic method. Thus, the patient describes the complaint to the doctor. To the doctor. The doctor then assessed the patient, checking over the faces, the eyes, nasal secretions, perspiration, and testing for stiffness of limbs or the abdomen. The doctor would ask for urine and a feces sample. They took the patient's pulse. We know that the Egyptians invented the hour, but they must have also invented smaller units of time. Did they invent the minute and the second also? That's the question. Finally, the doctor percussed the abdomen or chest of the patient. Hold on, we have somebody. Hold on, give me a second, Brother Rio. We got some. I'm gonna pick up on that. We got somebody who has a quick question. Caller from the area code 616. You have a question? Caller, area code 616. Okay, well, I'm just gonna mute his line then, because I don't. He unmuted himself. I thought he wanted to say something. Okay, I'm gonna get back to it, Brother Rio. Okay, the ancient Egyptians used a materia medica of 1,000 animal, plant, and mineral products. This is a large pharmacopoeia since they could also combine these animals, plant, and mineral products. They used molds from bread, i.e. from the penicillin family, internally and externally to treat infections. Thus, they created the first antibiotic. They used poppy extract, i.e. opium, to treat colicky babies and as a sedative and a painkiller. They use ox livers, rich in vitamin A, to treat night blindness. They use onions, rich in vitamin C, to treat scurvy. They use mandrake or related plants for sedation and to treat eye disorders. They use honey combined with grease as a wound salve. This has been shown to speed up the healing of wounds and reduce infections. Finally, they dispense prescriptions as pills, enemas, suppositories, and elixirs. Imhotep, a third dynasty prime minister, was the first great individual in recorded history. Before him, history was strictly about gods and kings. Imhotep was an intellectual of wide interest, including medicine. In Western culture, it has become customary to give credit to the Greek scholar Hippocrates. Am I saying that right, Brother Rio? Hippocrates or Hippocrates?
Yes.
Or hypocrite? No, that's really what I should say.
I like to.
Okay, the Greek scholar Hippocrates as the pioneering medical doctor. Medical practitioners today have the opinion of swearing on the Hippocratic oath to promise that they will do no harm to their patients. However, the oath is dedicated to the gods Apollo and Asclepius. Asclepius is none other than Imhotep. Even more embarrassing, Professor Sheikh Anta Diop reports the following information. Theophrastus, Dioscorides, and Galen perpetually cite the prescriptions that they received from the Egyptian physicians, or more specifically, as Galen says, that they had learned by consulting the works conserved in the library of the Temple of Imhotep at Memphis. I'm going to bring it home here. Which was still accessible in the 2nd century AD, and where 7 centuries before, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, was taught. So the father of medicine of these Europeans was taught in Memphis. The ancient Egyptians also invented a contraceptive solution. It was a concoction whose active ingredients was a spermicide that did actually kill sperm. They also pioneered a pregnancy test which involved sprinkling urine on a possible pregnant woman on barley to test how the barley grew. Modern scholars say this test was 40% successful. This is a low figure, but we must remember that modern pregnancy tests are far from reliable. Finally, the Cushites in the land to the south of Egypt also made use of antibiotics. They pioneered the use of tetracycline. So, I just wanted to put some information out there, brother, to give our listening audience specific information on when they say that Africans or black folks were the father of medicine and science and all these things. And I know that we hear this a lot. What I wanted to do was put some more details into it and be more specific about it so black folks can see, wow, they literally copied us and they don't did the dang thing. So our ancestors was on point, bruh, and they were very meticulous about what they did. But I know you got some information to bring on that. So go ahead, brother.
Yes, brother, that was very powerful information. And it was something that the family definitely needed to hear, because a lot of times don't know that it goes, further or goes past the Greeks and Hippocratic or Hippocrates or whatever his name is. They were thieves. because they stole it, they plagiarized it, and they don't want to give credit to where credit is supposed to go. And you have to understand who their gods were based on to understand, who they're giving praise and allegiance and this information where it comes from. But if you don't know it, then, you don't know it. But it's not like they're going to teach it to you. But in contrast to what you just read, in short, I want to start with this. Noble's new book, Medicinal Cannibalism in Early Modern English Literature and Culture, and another by Richard Sugg of England's University of Durham, Mummies, Cannibals, and Vampires, The History of Corpse Medicine from the Renaissance to the Victorians, revealed that for several hundred years, peaking in the 16th and 17th centuries, many Europeans, including royalty, priests, and scientists, routinely ingested remedies containing human bones, blood, and fat as medicine for everything from headaches to epilepsy. Mummies were stolen from Egyptian tombs, and skulls were taken from Irish burial sites. Grave diggers robbed and sold body parts. The question was not, should you eat human flesh, but what sort of flesh should you eat? The answer at first was Egyptian mummy, which was crumbled into tinctures to staunch internal bleeding, but other parts of the body soon followed. Skull was one common ingredient, taken in powdered form to cure head ailments. Thomas Willis, a 17th century pioneer of brain science, brewed a drink for bleeding that mingled powdered human skull and chocolate. Even King Charles II of England sipped the King's Drops, his personal tincture containing human skull and alcohol. Blood was procured as fresh as possible while it was still thought to contain the vitality of the body. This requirement made it challenging to acquire. The 16th century German-Swiss physician Paracelsus believed blood was good for drinking, and one of his followers even suggested taking blood from a living body. While that doesn't seem to have been common practice, the poor, who couldn't always afford the processed compounds sold in apothecaries, could gain the benefits of cannibal medicine by standing by at executions, paying a small amount for a cup of still warm blood of the condemned. However, consuming human remains fit with the leading medical theories of that day. Another reason human remains were considered potent was because they were thought to contain the spirit of the body from which they were taken. Spirit was considered a very real part of physiology, linking the body and the soul. In this context, blood was especially powerful. They thought the blood carried the soul, and did so in the form of vaporous spirit, says Sugg. The freshest blood was considered the most robust. Sometimes the blood of young men was preferred, sometimes that of virginal young women. But by ingesting coarse materials, one gains the strength of the person consumed. Noble quotes Leonardo da Vinci on the matter. We preserve our life with the death of others. In a dead thing, insensate life remains, which, when it is reunited with the stomach of the living, regains sensitive and intellectual life. Mummy was sold as medicine in German medical catalog at the beginning of the 20th century, and in 1908, a last known attempt was made in Germany to swallow blood at the scaffold. So this continued into the 20th century. And this is not to say that we have moved on from using one human body to heal another. Blood transfusions, organ transplants, and skin grafts are examples of a modern form of medicine from the body. Noble points to their dark incarnation, the global black market trade in body parts for transplants. Her book cites new reports on the theft of organs of prisoners executed in China, and closer to home, of a body-snatching ring in New York City that stole and sold body parts from the dead to medical companies. It's a disturbing echo of the past, says Noble. It's that idea that once a body is dead, you can do what you want with it. I'll stop there, brother. I won't even go into the bloodletting and all the other archaic nonsense they were into. But I believe that last statement was very powerful, that, it's that idea that once a body is dead, you can do what you want to with it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, when someone dies, or whether it's a loved one or just, any random person out on the street, it's mandated through statutes and codes and, municipalities that they have to go to a hospital and then to the mortuary, and then they're released to the family. So, your loved ones aren't yours. You can't do as you wish or even follow their own wishes in their will or what have you, because it is mandated how these bodies are to be processed and then given back to you. And we don't know.
Well, they're never given back to you. They're never released to you, sir.
What do you mean by that, sir?
And they never release them to the family. You can come see it. You're not taking the body with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they put it in the ground for you.
Yeah. So, they know, they want to control you all the way alive, all the way through death.
So these are the people who've taken the science that the ancestors put in place, and the teachings and the information that was collected got perverted, and it became, barbaric rituals or practices, of which recently, and I am of the opinion that they still go on. You may call them secret rituals or what have you, but, we still have an inordinate amount of people popping up missing all over the country. Nobody knows what happens to them. And then, you have the incident. We're in Atlanta, so, in the 70s, when all these black kids were popping up missing, and they want to blame it on one black man, but they didn't have any kind of evidence, not hardcore, what was happening to these kids. So I'm of the belief that the same things are continuing. It's just underground. But, these are the same people that we're dealing with today. This is the mentality that they had, and, this is what they did with the information that was left for us. So I just want people to understand the kind of mindset of the people who are perverting the information and have us in this situation that we're in presently. You had anything to add to that, brother?
Yes, sir. Yes, I agree. I agree. I think that's a great segment into tonight's topic, the seven souls of man and their culmination into the Christ. And basically, we're going to get into dealing with the spiritual aspect of the number 7 and why it is so significant in many spiritual concepts. We're also going to get into how that number is being misapplied and misrepresented in a lot of religious texts and also through esoteric and metaphysical expression. So, I'm ready to get into the topic. Tell me, are you ready to roll?
I am ready, brother. Let's do it.
Okay. So I'm gonna start out with some information, start reading some information, and if there's a point that you got something to say, let me know. Okay. Okay. It says now, whilst the people of modern times appear to have been losing their soul altogether, or not to have found out that they really possess one at all, the ancient Egyptians, Chaldeans, Hindus, Britons, and other races reckoned that they had 7 souls, or that the one soul as permanent entity included the sum total of 7 powers. You feel me on that, Brother Real?
Yes, sir. I'm with you.
Okay, so our ancestors saying we have 7 souls. All right. So, to the serious student of such subjects. Hold up, let me get into it. The 7 souls. Let me kick what the 7 souls are. First, we have which is the first soul is Ka, the body. The second soul is the soul of breath, the Ba. The third soul is the shade, the Kaaba. The fourth soul is an intelligence or a perception, which is Aku. The fifth soul is an ancestral soul, which is Seb. The sixth soul is the intellectual father, which is Ptah. And the seventh soul is a divine or eternal soul, which was known as Atmu. Okay. All right. Here we go, Brother Rio. All right. To the serious student of such subjects, the system of esoteric interpretation now put forth. Well, right now we're about to deal with, Brother Rio, is people who have esoteric explanations of certain mundane physical things, and also use metaphysical explanation, how in a lot of cases it is basically a misapplication of ancient knowledge. So we know, so the esoteric interpretation now put forth with its seven souls of man. Yeah.
Esoteric means hidden, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That which cannot be seen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
You have esoteric, and then you have exoteric.
Yes, sir.
And exoteric would be the outwardly appearance, whereas esoteric would be the inward, where, you know, it's hidden and really can't be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in that?
I feel you on that. Or an esoteric also would be it's expressing certain aspects of human existence on life and tying them to other things, say the sun, moon, certain planets, blase, blase, without that really meaning what the ancients meant in the first place. You feel me?
Because it's a mystery. Right.
Right.
And people are trying to just explain a mystery.
Right. And they're applying concepts in a lot of cases that don't add up. So here we go. So the esoteric interpretation now put forth with its seven souls of man projected into Shadowland. It's races of men that go around and round the planetarium 7 by 7, like the animals entering Noah's Ark. It's 7 planets as stages of human existence, with our Earth left out of the reckoning. It's 7 continental cataclysms, which occur periodically, but does not contain a revelation of new truth from the Orient, nor does it corroborate the old. The 7 souls of man were not metaphysical concepts at any time in the past or the present. The doctrine belongs to that primitive biology, or the physiology of the soul, which preceded the later psychology. Just as we speak of the 7 senses, the ancients spoke of the 7 souls as principles, powers, or constituent elements of man. These were founded on facts of common perception, verifiable in nature, and we do not need those faculties of the occult adept, which mankind at large has not evolved, in order that they may be apprehended. So basically what he's saying, Brother Rio, is you don't have to have all these esoteric concepts and all these metaphysical concepts and applying this to this and this means this, when what you need to do is go back to the root of what the ancients said. You feel me?
Yes, because adept means that that's just someone who is wise in the teachings for whatever particular organization they're a member of.
Right.
Correct?
Excuse me. Yes, sir.
So, organization, they deal with information that they want to keep exclusive to themselves or a mystery to other people. So they have ways of characterizing using different languages and interpretation of common words, so that when they're talking and understanding, it means one thing, and when other people hear it, it means another. I am a member of a fraternity, and I know that I can have a conversation with one of my fraternal brothers about internal secrets or just a regular conversation with other people in the room, and they have no idea what we're talking about. They may think or assuming that we're talking about one thing, and, you know, we're not dealing with that topic at all, because we understand we have a language between ourselves that we understand, and most people, they don't understand. So, yeah, I understand perfectly what you're saying with that, brother.
Yeah, yes, sir. Hold on for a sec, Brother Rio. I think we have a caller in queue. And I want to, before I get moving too far, I want to bring the caller in and see if we have anything to say. Caller from area code 616, what is it that you have to say?
I apologize, brother. I mean, I know I've been on here waiting a while, but I was kind of listening and then got distant with some things I'm doing here. But I have to ask, what is your reference of information and where can that be found at?
Yes, sir. The reference of information that I am using is a book referred to as Gerald Massey's Lectures. And
the title is The Seven Souls of Man and Their Culmination in Christ.
When was the copyright, if I'm not being too forward?
No, you're not. You're not.
Published in the 1900s.
That's a European book.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things the Europeans had no idea of how to interpret the dialect. Mm-hmm. They've created things to appear to something they're not. What you spoke about, which was the seven souls, literally are the attributes of man in the tree of life of Kabbalah. But listen, brothers, that book is not authentic. I would say go with the Metanetor or some of Maut Ashby's work. But that is definitely a European interpretation. I just wanted to add that. I don't listen to you every day. I thought I'd take a shot at you tonight. My name is Ayo. I do also do a show here on Black Talk Radio. If there's at any given time, if you like me to, because I got a lot of information on exactly this in reference to the role of metaphysics play in man and God. And a lot of information that you have, the words are there, but the way the philosophy is applied in the theory, it's not connected. So
hold on.
I would suggest.
Can I speak to you?
Say yes.
Okay. And I do a lot of reading myself, and what I like to do in terms of my reading is I read in a circle of what I refer to as trusted African scholars, and I read and I look at the bibliography and the references that they quote in their books. In terms of what I refer to trusted African scholars, Dr. Charles Finch, Sheikh Anta Diop, Yokef Benyamin, was it John G. Jackson, Dr. John Henry Clark.
Have you did any Yokef Benyamin's work? Speak about that tonight?
No, hold on. Let me. I'm not finished. This particular author, Gerald Massey, and this particular book was recommended by John Henry Clark, was recommended by Dr. Charles Finch, and also was spoken of by Sheikh Anta Diop. So I understand where you're coming from in terms of European scholars and also being very careful of listening to what European scholars have to say. I feel you, and I am 100% with you on that, because that's why I read in a circle of trusted scholars, because you cannot trust a lot of these Egyptologists out here, Peachtree Flinders, Wallace Budge. A lot of these cats, you got to check them. So I'm telling that's specifically why I'm bringing this information to the table, because our trusted ancestors and our trusted scholars said that we must read this scholar.
Dr. John Henry was speaking about says that Egyptologists were designed to interpret the truth. You've never heard of an Americanologist, a Eurotologist, or Asianologist. The Egyptologist was given the title in order for them to determine what the truth was. But listen, brothers, I just wanted to add a little bit to the show. I appreciate your time, man.
Yes,
and have a good evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay,
brother, this is the only thing that I would say is that we hear and we welcome your comments always, as well as your criticisms. But I would hope that you continue to listen and see what angle that we're coming from with the information, and then make the best judgments. And after we present some information, and as everything becomes a little clearer, call back in and let us know if you still feel that we're off base, or if the information that we're covering is staying strictly on the facts and cannot really be distorted.
Right. Yeah. Well.
So that would be the only thing.
But Brother Rio,
welcome.
But Brother Rio, I can understand where you're coming from, because what Gerald Massey is doing is questioning people who take an esoteric reference to things, and people who also look at things from a metaphysical concept. So he is challenging that, and I think that is where the point of contention comes from, in my opinion.
We have another caller in the queue. Brother Bag, would you like to
Peace, gentlemen. Good evening.
Good evening, Brother Bragg.
Hey, listen, how you guys doing tonight? Listen, I love your choice of books. I tell brothers, never put yourself in a box. Now listen, Gerald Massey is the man who set me on my trail. The book I got in my hand, the cover's torn off of it. I had it for about 20-some years. Gerald Massey's lectures, The Devil, Doctrines of Evil, and the Light of Evolution.
Yes, sir.
This book is a monster in books. You got to break this one open. And this book backs up a lot of the Egyptology. What it is, this dude Massey was before, well, he was at the time of the whitewash, but he didn't whitewash. He was one of the few that stuck by his gun. He had integrity. Now, I don't go with everything he says, but a lot of things inside of his books, because I got Light of the World, I got all his books. I got all of them.
Yes, sir.
I got the double book set. I got all his books. So he a beast. So I would recommend everybody to get into Massey. He'll set you straight on a lot of things.
Yes, sir.
That's a good choice, fellas. I just wanted to chime in on that, man.
Okay. Okay, Brother Real. So we're going to go for it. And like I said, for those out there, just let's listen to the information and then let's see and let the information be our guide and be our judge. So let's roll with it.
All right.
So it says, the only way of exposing the pretensions of false teachings and of destroying the superstitions, old or new, that prey upon and paralyze the human mind is by explaining them from the root. To learn what they once meant in their primary phase is to know what they do not and cannot mean for us today. You feel me on that, Rio?
Yes, sir. That gets to the heart of the matter in a nutshell. And, we'll look at the information that he is presenting as to what is the nutshell. And then, we can come to a conclusion as to if it is indeed factual or if it is, conjecture or from a perspective that we need to be kind of weary of. So I say we keep bringing it and dropping it and, call in.
Yeah, call in if you have an opinion.
Call in if you disagree.
Check this out, Rio. It is quite possible and even apparent that the first form of the mystical seven was seen to be figured in heaven by the 7 large stars of the Great Bear, the constellation assigned by the Egyptians to the mother of time and of the 7 elemental powers. Now, let me explain that to you, Brother Rio, and how powerful that is, because, and the reason why it's important to bring up the constellation, the Great Bear. One thing that our ancestors did was they observed the skies, and they observed them and they mapped them for long periods of time. Matter of fact, there was ancient astronomers who could tell you about they've seen the sun set in that place twice. They're talking about 2 great cycles of 50,000 years. So we were naturalists mapping the heavens. So, but once we observed this particular constellation, the Great Bear, there were 7 stars there that never set. Everything else was moving and changing and setting, but these 7 stars in the constellation of the Great Bear, where they were located, never set. One rose above all 7 of them for its period of time and then came back and another one rose. So our ancient ancestors viewed this constellation as never changing, was the place of heaven, was the place of equipoise, the place to get off of this cycle of death and rebirth. That's what they look for when they reference the Great Bear. You feel me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
so later they became known as the 7 Sisters, correct? Well, they're known by many names, but isn't that also a popular name for those particular set of stars?
Yeah, 7 sisters, 7 sons, all kinds of things. But what we're trying to do is show where the importance of the number 7 is coming from. So right there in the heavens, we're dealing with the number 7 for the non-setting stars. So now let me hit this at you. The Egyptians divided the face of the sky by night into 7 parts. The primary heaven was 7-fold. The earliest forces recognized in nature were reckoned as 7 in number. These became 7 elementals, devils, or later divinities. 7 properties were assigned to nature as matter, cohesion, fluxion, coagulation, accumulation, station, and division, and 7 elements or souls to man. It's a principle of sevening, so to say, was introduced, and the number 7 supplied a sacred type that could be used for manifold future purposes. When Abraham took his oath at Beersheba, the well of seven, we are told that he sevened or did seven. What you feel on that?
That's real powerful, brother. Real quick, though, you are listening to Melanated Roots Radio Station on the Black Talk Radio Network. We appreciate you all tuning in. And if you have any comments, just give us a call, and we'll get you right on the air. Brother, I do have a question. What do you mean when you say that he was sevening? That seems like a verb. What does that mean, sevening?
Sevening, allowing this principle or concept of the seven never setting stars coming down. You're doing it on different levels and different aspects. It is now being seen in the physical aspect of daily lives.
Okay.
Because Abraham took an oath at Beersheba, the well of the seven. You feel me? But Brother Rio, it's time for us to take a quick break. We're going to come back on the other side. You are listening to the Melanated Roots Radio Show with Brother Tommy and Brother Mario. We're going to take a quick break for station identification, and we will come back and continue on our topic, the seven souls of man and their culmination to Christ.
The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium. You are tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network for podcasts and live program schedule.
Okay, welcome back, everyone, to the Melanated Roots Radio Show. Brother Rio, you still with me, bro?
Oh, most definitely, sir.
Okay.
Interesting topic. I ain't going nowhere.
Okay, now we're going to move on with the concept of sevening. Why we're seeing seven in many different aspects of the scripture, many different religious things, people dealing with the number seven. Okay, the seven souls of the Pharaoh are often mentioned in the Egyptian text. The moon god Tahuti, or the later sun god, expressed the seven nature powers that were prior to himself and were summed up in him as his seven souls, of which he was the manifester as the eighth one. So, seven souls, and the manifester of the eighth one was Tahuti. Okay, in the Hindu drawings, we see the god Agni portrayed with seven arms to his body. These represent his seven powers, principles, breath, or souls. The seven rays of the Chaldean god Heptactus, or Io, on the Gnostic stones indicate the same septenary of souls. The seven stars in the hand of the Christ in Revelation have the same significance. There's a star with 8 rays, which is found to be the symbol of Buddha, of Assur in Assyria, of Mithras, and of the Christ in the catacombs of Rome. That was the symbol of the Gnostic pleroma of the seven souls, the perfect flower, or star of which was the Christ of the Gnosis, not of any human history. It can be traced back to Egypt as the star of Sut Horus, a star with 8 points or loops, undoubtedly meant for Orion, which was at one time the star of Annunciation, that showed the place where the young child lay, or where the God was reborn upon the horizon of the resurrection at Easter. A very ancient form of the 8-rayed star was the sign of the Nu, the associate gods of Egypt, who were the 7 Ali, or companions, as the children of the Great Mother. The Gnostic Ogdod. The Gnostic used the word Ogdod for the 8, because the word Ogdod, that is simply meaning 8. We're talking about the 7 souls, and then eventually culminating into the Christ, which is the 8th, and that was referred to as the Ogdogs by the Gnostics. The same type with the same meaning is represented in the book of Revelation, where the Son of Man, who is a male with female breasts and therefore not a human being, holds in his hand the 7 stars, which symbolize the 7 angels or spirits who are in the service of their Lord, like the 7 great spirits in the 17th chapter of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Tell me what you're feeling.
Bro, it's powerful, man. It's explaining a lot. explaining a whole lot.
So we're seeing where this number 7 is coming from. It's coming from our ancient ancestors.
And how it's being viewed as being sacred through different cultures that have spread out.
Yeah. And now these cultures are misinterpreting it and misapplying it and throwing some perverted knowledge out there. So a lot of people have no understanding why the number 7 is significant to them when they go to church or whatever. Okay. Okay. So primitive man naturally observed from the first that he was brought forth by the mother, formed of flesh, made from her blood. That is the mystical water or matter of life and the red earth of mythology. This primal element was represented by the great mother of all flesh, and the first soul was accordingly derived from the blood, the mystical parent of life. So right there, they have identified soul number 1 is the soul of blood. That we know that blood takes form, and that's why that is the first aspect of the 7 constituents of man. Blood is number 1. Because if you go to, go ahead, Brother Rio.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Because if you think about a lot of the pacts people make, and if you look at, it says about the Christ, what did it say? The lamb, the blood that was slain for the foundation of the world. And we're talking about blood sacrifices, and when people really get down and dirty and they want to get serious about a commitment, they do a blood sacrifice. This is all happening because this is ancient Egyptian knowledge, ancient African knowledge, that the first constituent of man was blood. You feeling me?
And I'm glad you said it. Yes, I am. I'm glad you said it because I knew you was going to say it. And that just brings home the next point. I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit, and then I'm going to hit how they have taken that information and perverted it into their own and kind of incorporated into their own. So it says, thus, in the Mangean account of creation, the great mother, Vari, is said to make the first man, let me say that again. The great mother, Vari, is said to make the first man from pieces of her own flesh being blood that has taken form. Some indeed say Hermes, misled by nature, mistook the blood for the soul. That is, they took it so to begin with, and such was the nature of the human soul number 1. This soul of blood is identified in Genesis 9, 4, and 5. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to segue over to Genesis chapter 9, verses 4 and 5. Earlier in the article, when we were comparing the medical practices, I don't even want to say medical, but the medical practices that our ancestors mastered, wrote down information, recorded, and left for us, and how the Europeans, once they got a hold of the information, the practices they started doing, but they still held some of the same lessons and understanding of the blood had some type of life and was tied and linked in with the soul, even though they really didn't understand it. So in Genesis chapter 9, verses 4 and 5, it goes to say, but you must not. And I am reading from the New International Version.
You ain't got a King James? Brother Rio. Okay, Brother Rio, something's wrong with your mic. I cannot hear you. Brother Scotty, can I be heard? Brother Rio.
Joining conference now. This conference is being recorded by the organizer.
Man being the general term for man and woman, if you're here upon this earth, then you have the first soul, which is created through the blood. That make sense, Brother Tom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to add that in.
Okay.
So people had an understanding that, you know, we're talking about the culmination of the elements coming together to form blood. You know, when the sperm hits the egg for that first time, and you know that DNA starts to, you know, pop and be formed, which is the blueprint for the blood of the individual. At that particular time, your first soul has been incarnated.
Yes, sir.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah, and
so go ahead.
Let me bring it from a Hebrew Genesis standpoint. In that first account of the creation of man in the Hebrew Genesis, he is formed in the image of the Elohim, who were the 7 primal elemental powers that became celestial as the keepers of time in heaven in their second phase, and ultimately the 7 planetary spirits. At the early stage of sociology, man descended from the mother alone. Now, in the second creation, the woman is derived from the male as the progenitor. The first is born of blood. The second is born of bone, which is a type of masculine substance. So we acknowledge that the mother blood is the beginning, but you see a switch and a turn in the King James version or in this monotheistic religion to where the woman is now coming from the man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We are turning the knowledge backwards. So it says right here. So, and the reason why they say that the woman comes from the bone, because the bone is a masculine substance. Okay. And the two sources, female and male, supply the two doctrinal types to when Paul says, as in Adam, all men die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. Here, the true interpretation you just cannot understand what they mean when they're talking about the woman in Genesis being created from the man until you go back to the beginning, the original story of the first soul that comes in the man, which is the soul of blood. Specifically lets you know that the mother blood is the beginning of all things. This woman being created from man is a corruption of ancient knowledge, brother.
I agree. And let me add on to that, because it says blood is the Adamic soul. For the mother source from the mother source came the red earth of the Adamic or primary creation, whence the rabbis sometimes call Adam the blood of the world. In the Semitic languages, Assyrian and Hebrew, Adam signified blood, simply blood, as the red. It was thought at one time that 2 primal races of men were alluded to in the cuneiform text, which we know is a derivative of the metanetter.
Yeah, cuneiform.
Under the name, the cuneiform. Under the names of Adamu and Sarku. But it is now known that these names signify the 2 principles of female matter and male spirit, also known as the Hindu Purusha.
Yes, sir.
So you know, he's correcting the record by saying, you know, at one time they were thinking it was this, but, you know, in actuality, we know it to be this, and it's the male and the female coming, the sperm and the egg coming together to form the first soul, which is that blood.
Yes, sir. Hold on for a sec, Brother Rio. That's heavy kicking. We got a caller in queue, area code 423. Caller, what you got on your mind?
Hey, how y'all brothers doing? First of all, congratulations on your show. The first question I want to ask is, are y'all on every Monday? Is that the schedule?
Yes, sir. Every Monday at 8.
Sir. Every Monday from 8 to 10.
Okay. I'm sorry. My name is Jerry, and I'm calling from Chattanooga, by the way. I am going over a lot of this, which y'all speaking of right now. And in Genesis, from the King James Version of the Bible, it also states that God created man and woman. So, with you saying that the blood comes from the woman, then who created the woman? I mean, from your perspective.
No, let me clarify it. We're talking about the mother blood in a feminine aspect, not in terms of an actual physical woman.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not talking about an actual physical woman.
In the beginning, in the initial stages, but it is the woman's blood that nourishes the embryo. But that is not the first soul. That's more along the lines of the second soul, which we're going to get into in just a few minutes.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna sit back because I have plenty of questions, but I want to get some clarity first.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm gonna sit back, and if you will, have me later on before the show ends. I will have some more questions.
Yes, sir. Stay there, Brother Jerry. We definitely want to hear from you, bro. We want to hear your opinion, your thoughts. Brother Scotty, go ahead.
Hey, brothers, great show thus far. I have a question about blood in the context of even his question. So are you talking about blood in the context of how you have different blood groups, and with A being the oldest, AB being the second oldest, and O being the latest mutation of different blood groups, and O is what most people had, a majority of people. But I just learned this when I went to the VA, and they drew some blood, and it was a sister drawing some blood. So I asked her about the different blood groups and what have you. I'm AB positive, so are y'all talking about it in that context?
No, we talking simpler than that. O is the negative. O is the oldest blood type. Then came A, then came B, then came AD. But we're keeping it simple. We're talking about the foundation of blood being made from the beginning, right. And it all starts from your DNA. And your DNA is formed when the sperm from your father and the sperm from the egg from your mother, which could be called sperm. But when they join together and that DNA is fused together and starts to create the being or that individual embryo within the mother's womb, the DNA is the blueprint. So that is responsible for creating everything in your body. And it comes from the sperm, which is the blood from your father, and the egg, which is the blood of your mother. It mixes together to form your own unique blood.
Yes, sir. And that is the first soul that sets in.
Soul. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, and that is the first. Okay, so all men derive from the motherhood at first, and in that mythical creation, the man was really created from the woman, instead of the woman being taken from the man, which was of necessity a later creation in keeping with sociology. We had moved from matriarchy to patriarchy, didn't we? Because in the monotheistic religions, we now have a Father who art in heaven, when at one point in time we didn't have a Father who was in heaven. We didn't know who the Father on earth was. So everything was matriarchal, which we fully understand.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And that was a shift in the political agenda.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The far earlier mystery was that of a man being created from the woman, the red earth, or the blood. Next, it was apprehended that the mother inspired the breath of the life in her embryo. So we're about to move into soul number 2. Soul number 2 is the breath. So soul number 1 is the blood. Soul number 2 is the soul of breath. So in these two were the first 2 souls of 7, because blood supplied the element of flesh or form, and breath was the primal element of life. That flesh, that form had to breathe. So therefore, the second constituent aspect of man was the breath. Okay. Blood and breath being 2 primary elements or souls of life. These consequently became the great 2 types of sacrificial offering. So if you look at the spiritual concepts around the world and you look at sacrificial offerings within religious concepts, blood and breath are the 2 biggest sacrifices that are given to the creative forces. And let me tell you why. It was on account of the natural genesis that these 2 souls of the blood and breath were typically continued in the water and the breath employed for the regenesis or regeneration of the child in Christian baptism. Do you remember that, Brother Rio? In Christian baptism, the water and the breath are being used as a part of the baptism for regeneration and regenesis. You feel me on that?
Yes, sir.
The observation that blood, the first factor in primitive biology, was the basis used by nature in building up the future human being is probably the source and origin of the superstition that in building a city, a fortress, a bridge, or a church, an enduring foundation must be laid in blood. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
So they're letting you
yes,
know
sir.
that that's why you see this in all these religious different ideas and concepts. The idea of blood or blood sacrifice, because that's what they're talking about. They're giving reference to what our ancient ancestors said in the beginning. Now, as the breath of life was a kind of soul, so the steam of food or the incense presented in sacrifice was a form of the breath of life ordered to the spirits of the dead or to the gods. Now we know, Brother Rio, that food is offered to the spirits, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we're seeing the very two foundations of or the constituents of man, the very two basic elements are starting with blood and breath, and these are two elements or two things that are throughout our religious iconography all over the world. No matter what religion it is, they're sacrificing blood and they're sacrificing food, and the steam and the smell of that food is what is going to the gods.
Yes, sir. I have something to add to that, brother, but I wanted to back up just for a second. When we were talking about the perversion and how we covered the political agenda of why it became the woman came from man. But also I wanted to go over the physiological aspect of it, which later on they popularized, but it still had a motive and an agenda about it. So, as we know, it is the man that determines the sex of the embryo or the child, because we have the XY chromosome. So if it matches up with the woman, then it's going to be a girl. And if, they're opposite, then you're going to get a boy. So it is the man who does determine the embryo. So, woman does come from man in that sense, but not in the sense that they portray it not the literal sense that they portray it in the Bible, coming from the rib of Adam and, things of that nature. I just wanted to add that in, brother.
Okay.
Real
and
quick.
Also, let me throw this in here, that the blood and the breath
Good.
also survive in the bloody wafer and the incense of the Roman ritual. So we're still seeing that blood in that soul there. Okay. Now we have to go back to this soul of breath to reach the origin of the transmigration of souls, which has been continued into the domain of later doctrines by those who are ignorant of its beginning. To breathe and to transmigrate are synonymous in Egyptian under the word sin. But the transmigration of the soul of breath is neither physical nor spiritual in a modern sense. So we just letting you know that the importance of that breath is going to transmigrate. It's going to transform. You feel me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And the best way that I can kind of explain it is substance. The breath is giving substance. It allows the processes that are going to be taking place in the embryo to have life, to be able to do the things that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. With a primitive,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
brother. Okay, with a primitive soul of breath was evolved the notion of an ancestral soul of the race, tribe, and totem, which of necessity was a general, as the intercourse of the sexes was then common. So the king who never dies was first established upon the generic soul of the race, and not a reoccurring identical personality of the incarnated soul. Now hold on, Rio, I'm gonna have to go back and say this because I want to make a disclaimer before we get started. A lot of people, when you're dealing with concepts of reincarnation, They look at the concept of reincarnation from an individual standpoint. That I, Tommy J, Brother Rio, is gonna individually go somewhere and come back as this, that, this, or another. When I want people to listen here clearly, because our ancestors said something different in terms of the concept of reincarnation. That it was not an individual thing, it was an ancestral thing. And let me explain it. The king who never dies was first established upon the generic soul of the human race, and not on a reoccurring identical personality of the reincarnated soul. Thus, reincarnation was true to the general ancestral soul, but when continued in a later state of sociology and applied to the individual soul, it is a counterfeit, a false presentment of the original doctrine. The basis of all incarnation and reincarnation has to be sought in the primitive animism of the general, ancestral, or pan soul first recognized. At that stage of thought, it is our soul that comes and goes and returns again, not my soul, not yours. And afterwards, the reincarnation of soul was continued as the reincarnation of souls, when souls had been individualized here on earth by the Father coming to recognize his own children. So what our ancestors, what he's saying is our ancestors looked at it as we are part of an ancestral soul, and that ancestral soul continues to come. It is ever coming. That's why you see the greatness of our people. You're always going to see the greats amongst us stand up on this ram, because that ancestral soul is consistently coming back. Mansa Musa's particular ego personality has not been coming back and forth, but that ancestral serve that birthed Mansa Musa always brings us forth. You feel me, my brother?
Yes, sir. And just a side note, the ancestral soul is the fourth soul. Mm-hmm. We're still discussing the second. We're going to move on to the third, but that in particular is the fourth soul. But we have a caller with their hand up in the queue. Caller from the 423. Go ahead. What's your comment, brother?
Yeah, this me. This Jerry again. I got kicked off, and I'm a little bit confused. Can y'all brothers give out the text that you're reading from, where we can find this information on our own and study, if you don't mind?
Not at all. This is The Seven Souls of Man by Gerald Massey.
Seven Souls of Man.
Seven Souls of Man and their culmination in Christ.
Okay. One of the questions I had mentioned earlier before I had got kicked off is that as far as the Bible, God created man and woman. Now this happened before he pulled woman out of man's rib, which means that it was a woman that had went, I guess because I'm from I was in the service, I tend to use this terminology, but this woman went AWOL. She left Adam, and he decided that he had got lonely, and then he was put to sleep, and she was taken from one of his ribs, which means that they were created at the same. If the blood is, if man is generating the sex of the babies that are being procreated afterwards, that part right there, I'm kind of iffy on, and one of you maybe could kind of put me in a direction to find out something more. But I know that in the womb, every child is a woman or a girl until that deciding factor of where the ovaries drop down into the testicles. So for a good portion of that incubation, every child is a girl. Now this is not through a religious text. This is a literal fact that every child is born with two X chromosomes until one of the legs fall off, which creates that Y. Are we on the same page right now?
Well, not really.
You're absolutely correct. Every embryo does start off as being female, but the genetics of it is from the beginning. It's determined whether it's going to be ultimately a male or female. Everything goes through stages. But if it does have that X chromosome, then at a certain stage, chemicals are going to be secreted to where the embryo, like you said, the testicles drop, and the sac is sealed up, and the penis starts to grow, and more testosterone. It starts to take on what it is to be a human male. But yeah, I mean, you are correct. It does always start out as a female embryo, but that doesn't mean it's going to be its ultimate destination. But it is determined from the point of when the sperm and the egg join together. That's already decided. As soon as they join, and that DNA, which is the blueprint for everything in the body, from sex, gender, any tendencies of ailments that you may have if your body gets out of balance, all that's decided from your genetics, which takes place at that first soul. In relation to the Bible, I know you're talking about Lilith and, how she was demonized, but I mean, that's not really, that part is not in the Bible. So, I mean, we're kind of cherry picking because, we're dealing with conjecture and stories, and there are a lot of different questions about the Genesis version of creation.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. I was asking that question because I never actually brought up Lilith. I was just bringing up the actual verses of that Genesis because it does say that in the beginning God created man and woman, and then several verses after it goes into creating man and taking a rib out. So me and a lot of Christians get into it with that because I do also know the Bible. But before I continue, I would really love to hear what your partner was getting ready to say, because he seems as if he had a different perception.
Yeah. Well, the perception that I was looking at it is, at least Jerry, because I felt like he was coming from a Christian standpoint. That's kind of looking at it from the standpoint of being in a garden, that, God placed so-and-so in a garden and then lulled him to sleep, and then the woman was created from the rib. We're dealing with, that's a fictitious story altogether. When we're dealing with the blood in this particular aspect of what we're talking about the very creation of a physical human being, whether it's male or female. You feel me? We're talking about these constituent elements ending up into man.
I understand. I'm just trying to get caught up with what you two brothers are speaking of. Is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
I talk about this thing all of the time. Never really got no true answers as of yet. But you are going into such details. I have to ask the question, particularly because you're referencing the Bible.
Yes, sir.
So when you're referencing the Bible, I don't have my hands on that book that you were speaking of, but I'm gonna go back through the archives and I'm gonna hear it again, and then I'm gonna write it down this particular time, and I'm gonna get my hands on that, because these are things that not only me myself, but people who are, because I was raised as a Baptist Christian here in Chattanooga in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what goes on down here. That's what they teach, and I get into it. And when I say get into it, it's not not no physical altercation or what have you, but we have verbal bouts with me and pastors most of the time, because they assume that I don't know the word just as well as they do, because most people don't read the Bible. Right. So when I bring up these verses, they have no answer for. You guys seem to have some type of answer, but we could still go into detail, and I'm gonna continue to tune in.
Okay.
Specifically for that factor, because I would like to know. I guess you would call me a information junkie.
Yeah.
So I would, I do my own show, and we talk about these type of things also. So it's an ongoing lesson.
Yeah, because what I'm
Excuse me, sir?
Yeah, because what I'm gonna do, Jerry, is I'm gonna take it to the next level, because as we keep going here, there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered, because it's specifically speaking about some pretty heavy stuff. So I'm gonna continue real fast, but hang in there with us. Now we're gonna move on to the third soul, which is the Kaaba, or the third soul is a light, visible but not tangible envelope of the second soul of breath. The Kaaba signifies a cover, to veil, to cover over. Just like they say, you have to pierce through the veil. So the soul of blood and your soul of breath is enveloped. It has our ancient ancestors said it has a covering, a veil that goes over it. Hence, it's the type of third soul. The Egyptians referred to it as a sunshade, so to speak, something similar to like a protection of the first two souls. You feel me on that, Rio?
Yes, sir. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And with the information that you already kicked about the fourth soul being the ancestral soul, where we get
I want to bring a little more about the third.
Perception, definition, and our universal knowledge from. We need that barrier in order to have our individualism. Yes. So that, the Tommy, this is Brother Tommy, not the whole village of ancestors kicking to you at one time.
Yes, sir.
They disseminate information to you, but it has to be disseminated through your third soul as kind of like a filter. So you still have your individualized personality or ego, or however you want to say it.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, because we now have to take on, in this illusion, the concept of time and space, and that unification is now been separated. And so this shade, this cover that covers over your original is what you're saying, that separation, that illusion of time and space.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I know we're running out of time, but I feel like we still have to slow down and we have to unpack some of this stuff. So you just hit upon, the veil and being able to pierce the veil. And, to me, that is stating that we have to be able to raise our vibration. We have to be able to raise our awareness in such a way to where we can see through, this third soul, in order to be able to get more information from the fourth soul, and also to be able to understand that most of the things that we see are an illusion, and and the way that you have to do that is, again, through the breath, which is nourishment. So it all goes back to your diet, what you're consuming, and how are you feeding your temple in order to maximize these seven souls and reach, heaven, which I know we're going to go into later on, so I'm not going to break all of that down right now.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah. Okay. And I feel you. And because the third soul has that sense perception. So, and then like you said, the fourth soul is an intelligence. So the third soul was a sense perception, a Kaaba, envelope that covers it. The fourth soul is our intelligence, developing perception, a growing child. And the fifth soul is an animal soul that visibly descends upon the male nature at a period of puberty and not till then. This was the first soul that was seen to have the power of perpetuating itself for this life. This accounts for the superstition that they wandered about after death as elves or elementaries on the outskirts of this life, unable to enter the other world. For infant elementaries were believed to walk and wander as elves, fairies, and brownies in search of a soul or in want of a name, as the conferring of a name was one mode of constituting a personality or communicating a soul to the child. So that's where we get the concepts of fairies, children who are stuck in certain realms. They're talking about children who died before the setting in of certain souls. Go ahead, brother. To where they did not get a complete soul.
Right. So you're talking about the fifth soul currently, right? The animal soul?
Yes, sir.
Or the ability of the soul to be able to reproduce itself.
Right. and children who die at a certain age who are not in a place to reproduce themselves. Obviously, that animal soul has not descended upon them as of yet. This is where you get the concept of fairies, elves, brownies, things of that nature. People who are so-called trapped and can't ascend. These are concepts of people who so-called did not get their full 7 souls.
And again, I know you're going to touch on this, but it also comes back to the political agenda of, as patriarchy was on the rise, that they did not attribute women as being capable of receiving this soul. Mm-hmm. Because they weren't seen as being the providers of fertilization.
Right.
So the men, the masculine principle of energy being the injector, the female principle of receiving it, they viewed it from the standpoint that, okay, well, it's the masculine, since he is the interjector, he is the energy, he is the one doing the pushing. It is he that receives that particular soul. And the only way the woman could receive salvation is by receiving that soul from a man. But she had no ability of obtaining that soul herself.
That's right.
Which to me doesn't make, from sound right reason, it doesn't make sense, because a woman still has to be of the age of maturity, in order for that energy to be used for creation or procreation. But that's neither here nor there. That's the rationale that they use to pervert that information and, to raise patriarchy and, the male ego up, and another way to diminish women's role in society, and as well as justifying, all that man and boy love they had going on. But, that's going back to topics that we've already covered in, homosexuality and the Greek cultures and all things of that nature. But go ahead, continue, brother.
Okay, and also when we're talking about this ancestral soul perpetuating itself, that's where we also get the concept of men who are unsexing themselves to save their souls, becoming eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake, or a doctrine of salvation taught by the Christ in Matthew's gospel, which is carried out by castrating Christians. So we're dealing with that ancestral soul, that fifth soul, the aspect of being able to perpetuate oneself, and the reason why they eventually got to the point where they would cut off their own genitals to become eunuchs is because they have misapplied the doctrine of knowing that you have to combine the two units, be either male nor either female. Because remember, in the gospel, Clement of Rome asked the Christ, or Shalom, who was the king, Salome asked the Christ, when was the kingdom to come? And Christ said, when the male and the female shall neither be male nor female. That's why that's why you have eunuchs, or people who have castrated themselves, and basically another false interpretation of ancient knowledge.
And to pretty much get an understanding of this in entirety, we really don't have enough time to unpack it, but you have to understand the difference between the Greek term Christ and where they got it from, which is Christos, which means the anointed one, and how the ancestors viewed one coming into becoming anointed, anointed with oils. And you have pictures of on the walls of people who had crocodile oil on their head, bowls of crocodile oil, and it was just running down their head. And that was signifying that they had reached a certain level, and that level was the culmination of all 7 souls, and they were the 8th person, so that they were anointed. They were in their heavenly mind. Their pineal gland was functioning at a high level, and they could see through all the mysteries and all the wonders, and, you know, their bodies were operating at an efficient level. And it all starts with sexual energy, or set, and being able to control set. So when Heru overcame Set, he rose into his position as taking over for his father. So all of that comes back to, again, the eunuchs castrating themselves to kind of take advantage of that male sexual energy and having that elevate them to another status, even though that wasn't the correct way to do it. It wasn't meant to be achieved in that way. In a nutshell, that's kind of an explanation, another explanation for that.
Right, but I feel you, Brother Rio. You have Europeans carnalizing a lot of things that are spiritual. They're making it physical. They're trying to put spiritual concepts into real history. That's the biggest issue. When I could talk with Brother Jerry, that's the biggest issue I have about Christianity. You're taking spiritual concepts and you're making them physical, and that's not what they were meant to do. It's just a misapplication of ancient knowledge and ancient information. And
also, Brother Tommy, I don't know if the caller who called in earlier is still listening, but information, as Brother Bragg was saying, is meant to, take you in different directions. And, all information is supposed to be looked up, or you can delve into it deeper. And in finding the information about the fact, I went to, different sources in different genres because, the truth is going to be consistent. Mm-hmm. So even if it's applied in another area, you can still see that thread of truth and how it rings true. So when I was researching the digestive system, I saw that fat has fat-soluble vitamins that are essential for the processing of food and nourishing the body. And in a nutshell, it also comes down to your liver, which aids in the breakdown of fat-soluble vitamins. But your liver also breaks down cholesterol, and cholesterol is one of the main components, along with those fat-soluble vitamins, for your sexual hormones. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to try to harness or maximize your sexual hormones, be it for reproduction or overall energy, or the raising in different, cultures, raising your kundalini, or resurrecting Jesus, all saying the same thing, just in different terminology, or, becoming the anointed one, as our ancestors would say. But raising that energy up through your different biological levels to nourish your pineal gland, to turn on all your extrasensory perceptions, or maximize your perceptions. So my study of nutrition and fat-soluble vitamins and different things relating kind of into, everything, that it just culminated all together until, it's one cohesive bunch, and everything just kind of fits together. And until I find some information to the contrary, this is lining up. So, I don't agree with everything that he says either, but on that particular part, he seems to be on point, according to my extra studies. And, I invite anybody else who has researched and studied and found something different to please come and contribute. So, we can continue to study, iron it out, and we can get to the bottom of it. So, go ahead, Brother Tom. I just wanted to add that.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, we're getting close to where we got a little bit of time, so I'm going to have to skip forward in some of the things I want to bring, but I had some really good information that I want to share with the people. But we'll just have to, kind of think. So basically the first soul was a formative soul, the soul of blood. The second soul, was a soul of breath that breathed. The third soul was an envelope, what the ancient Egyptians called the Kaaba, the envelope, the shade. The fourth soul was perception. It gave us the ability to start perceiving as a growing child is able to do. The fifth soul is our animal soul, which it descends on us at the age of puberty and gives us the ability to procreate, to be able to self-perpetuate ourselves. And then the sixth soul is the soul of intellect. I wanted to bring you some information about the sixth soul in terms of the information, because when the brain had been identified as the physical basis or matter of mind, the sixth soul was then derived from this superior source of intelligence in the head. And in the Egyptian ritual, this is what it says: Horus has come to me out of my father Osiris. He has come to me out of the brains of his head. That was as the nous of the Gnostic, the revealer of an intellectual soul, who in Egypt is the god Ptah. So the intellectual soul was the seventh soul, the intellect, which we now carry with us in our ability to expand intellectually. And then we also have the seventh soul, and it was derived from the individualized fatherhood, which was represented by the father Atum for the first time in Egyptian mythology. Atum being equivalent to the Buddhist Atma, the creative soul. Atum of the seventh creation represent the eternal. He inspires the breath of life, everlasting, and is called the one soul God without change. At this stage of attainment, the soul exults that it is created forever and is soul beyond time. So that is the seventh soul, and at that point the soul knows it is eternal. So I just wanted to, I had a lot more information I wanted to give out. Plus, not only that, I wish the first brother who called in would have stayed on the line, because the eightfold path of all those different concepts, I can trace them right back to Kemet, ancient Kemet. The eightfold path of the Buddhas, all those things, you can trace them right back to Kemet. They're just other cultures that have taken ancient Egyptian knowledge and expressed them in different ways. The eightfold path, all those things are nothing but ancient Egyptian concepts, just taken into another culture and expressed in a different way.
Agreed, brother. Agreed.
And let me hit him with this last one. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, go ahead, brother. I was just going to say, and that's one of the purposes of the show, is we call it melanated roots, because, the topics that we're bringing up, we're trying to have the central theme be highlighted, that all this stuff comes from our ancestors, and the information that we're getting or being fed, most of it is perverted. But if we get back to what our ancestors left for us, we can cure a whole lot of things that are going on in our own community, because we cannot be lied to anymore, because we can see where they are trying to twist and they're trying to leave out certain details, and we can rely on ourselves as being the source of our information and not relying on them and their interpretations. Now, they have done a lot of the work, so we have to be able to trace it back, and we have to be able to clear up a lot of the misconceptions that they have, either purposefully or they just didn't have the capacity to understand.
Yes, sir.
So we have our own sons out there who are doing the work.
Yes,
so,
sir.
I just wanted to state that. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, we got a little bit of time. I just want to knock this last little thing out. I think that'll bring it home. The septenary of souls can be traced from first to last by means of the Egyptian doctrine of transformation. Thus, the blood source that formed the embryo was quickened and transformed into the soul that breathed. The breathing soul attained cover and transformed into the corporeal soul of shade. This transformed into an intelligence. The intelligent youth transformed into the adult when the animal soul or procreative spirit manifested at puberty. The adult soul transformed into the Hebrew neshama, the wise soul, or the Hindu buddhi, the soul of ascertainment, and this into the soul that makes to relive, which was represented by the god Atum, in whom the fatherhood was individualized at last as the begetter of an eternal soul. Also by the Hebrew Adam, whose head reached up to the seventh heaven. This doctrine of transformation and the unifying of various individualities into one personality puts an end to the septenary and to the diverse destinations after death of several human principles, which must have already attained totality by unity in order that there might be a personality or ego in this life. Not one of the 7 souls had obtained the permanent personality, and as they were but 7 rudimental factors in the development of an ultimate soul, so they could not become 7 spirit or as realities or apparitions in another life. Each older self was merged in the new, and therefore the 7 could neither be simultaneous nor contemporary, except when absorbed in the oneness of unity. Hermes describes the one soul of the universe as entering into creeping things and transforming into the soul of watery things, and this into the soul of things that live on the land. And airy ones are changed into men, and human souls that lay hold of immortality are changed into spirits as they ascend up to the region of the fixed stars, which is the 8th sphere. And this is the most perfect glory of the soul. But this was as the one soul of life, not as the 8 or 7 individual souls. The 8th was the immortal blossom on the human branch, the 7 souls of man and their culmination into the Christ. Yes, sir, Brother Rio, that's what I want to bring. And if you got anything to say, let's take them on out.
No, sir. You said it all, brother.
Okay. And what we're gonna do, Brother Rio, we're gonna do a part 2 of this next week, so that we can get a little deeper into the understandings of the different aspects of the soul. It feels like we jumped around a lot of it, so we definitely got a part 2 coming soon.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And it sounds like we're going to have some questions from the callers. So all questions and conversation is welcomed.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to the Melanated Roots radio show, brought to you by Black Talk Radio Network. We appreciate your effort and energy for tuning in. We appreciate all the callers for calling in, and we are out.
Sir.